There are free men among us, men who have unshackled themselves from the expectations of society to pursue a life of freedom, liberty, and success on their own terms. In 2006, a 27-year-old man named Jarod was roped into a long-term relationship with a Western woman. Then one day in 2012, Jarod chose to go his own way. Greetings, esteemed viewers. I'm a 34-year-old Australian man. Almost 1 year ago, I decided to break up with my fiancée, as she had over time become intolerable to deal with. Before I get into the issues I had with her, I would like to spend some time going over my lifetime experiences with women, so that you have an understanding of why I am the way that I am, and what led me to adopting a MGTOW lifestyle shortly after breaking up with my fiancée at the age of 33. Let's go back to 1998. I was a 19-year-old boy, and I was in my second year of university studying for a degree in computer science. During this time, I had my first sexual experience and holiday fling with a girl I met at a nightclub. It was intense, and I fell head over heels for her. She was my first real love. At the time, I was very naive, and I lacked the wisdom and maturity that comes with age. I was completely ignorant that despite my 6'2" height, boyish good looks, nice guy attitude, and bright future in computing, my sexual market value was well below that of my girlfriend's. I was a nerd, a nobody, a nothing, an outcast. She was a young, attractive, and fertile woman who had options and incoming interest from men of all ages. During our time together, I found it odd that she did not share my intense need for sex. I was horny all the time, while she was merely indifferent. That was my first awakening that women were different in this regard and held power over men due to our intense need for sex. Several months went by and we enjoyed our time together until I got a call from her telling me that she loved me, but she was not in love with me. Now, I have a high IQ, and I was undertaking a demanding computer science degree, and for the first time in my life I was confused. What the hell did that statement mean? From that point onwards, I just knew that dealing with women was going to be a frustrating experience. Shortly after she ended our romance, I turned 20, graduated from university, get a good job, a professional job with a decent income, and start really getting into nightclubs and bars. I like going out and picking up new women. I enjoy the rush of it. Despite the enjoyment, it was a tough experience and it was hard to actually pick up women. Many of them would treat me like shit and give me a hard time. Perhaps it was due to me dressing somewhat poorly, being a prototypical nerd and being out of shape. The typical Poindexter. Perhaps it was my slightly weak chin, a few dental problems. I was confused though. It seemed that most guys were being rejected, and the only guys who did actually look to be succeeding were the bad boys and the idiots, the type of guys that had disrespected or bullied me in high school and university. Fast forward to age 22. I knew something was up with women based on my accumulated experiences, so I decided to start doing some independent research on the topic of the fairer sex in my spare time. I went online and found the beginning of the men's movement. I had a few laughs at some of the guys who I thought were just old and bitter. I put the research aside and kept up my night clubbing. One night I go out and I meet an older woman. She was 29 years old. We were very attracted to one another, and despite her being 7 years older than me, we start dating. It starts getting serious, and I ask her to live with me. At the time, I did not understand the danger I was in, given her background and her employment. She was a women's studies graduate and working in HR, a feminist. Our relationship lasted for 3.5 years. We had some fun times together, but the last 6 months were terrible. Turns out that she had been raped in the past, and this led her to having an attitude and a hatred towards men that she started taking out on me. Many times it felt like I was the rapist, and all her anger and issues towards that rapist were directed towards me. I knew I had to get out of this relationship, as she was driving me mentally insane and making me extremely angry all the time. I hated coming home and having to deal with her. She was kicking in doors, getting violent and screaming abuse at me. This came to a head one night when she pushed me so far that I grabbed her by the neck and I was ready to punch her. I was so worked up and so angry. I caught myself, however, in the moment, and I let go of her. I got up from the bed, looked at her, and told her right then and there that our relationship was over and that I wanted her out of my house. This didn't go well. It was a real struggle over the coming weeks moving her out. After she was out, I reflected on my experiences with her. I was confused, and I started back online researching the subject of women. I then found Dr. Warren Farrell, bought and read all of his books, which I might add I had to import from the United States, as none of them could be purchased in bookstores here in Australia. I wonder why. I internalised them, and for the first time at age 25 I felt that I had a good understanding of women, as well as an excellent understanding of men and why men are the way they are. The next year I'm single. I'm still going out to nightclubs and bars and meeting more women. One night I meet a 25-year-old woman from the United States, and we have a one-night stand. I find her extremely attractive. The only problem was that she was going home. Turns out she'd only gone out that night because it was her last night in Australia and she wanted a one-night stand with an Australian man. A few months go by. She then contacts me out of the blue. She's coming back to Australia. I thought that was great because I was really attracted to her and we had a great sexual experience together. So she gets back to Australia and we start dating. A few months into this, I ask her to move in with me. We get ourselves an apartment. Life is really good. We are both smitten with one another. Around this time I pick up bodybuilding and sprint training. I start losing a lot of body fat and I'm building a really nice body. I look in the mirror. I'm 6'2". I knew I could build a male model body if I wanted to because I had the height and was a typical ectomorph. So I set the goal to build the body of a male model, which is exactly what I did. I lost a lot of body fat, got muscular and ripped, and started doing some fitness modelling. At this time I also had some cosmetic surgery to fix a problem with my upper jaw and chin, and had orthodontics straighten my teeth. I started dressing really stylishly, and I started becoming much more visible and attractive to women. I also noticed a lot of looks and attention from gay men for the first time since my teens. I didn't act on anything, however, as I was in a relationship. I asked my girlfriend to marry me. She said yes, and we were now engaged. I decided to travel to meet my fiance's parents. Her mother is very similar to my fiance, bitchy and complains a lot. I shrugged it off, however. I was still in the throes of love and our relationship was going really well. A couple of years go by and we both turn 30. Things start getting difficult in my relationship with my fiance. Slights, put-downs, controlling behaviour, bitchiness, complaining, nagging, and overall unpleasantness starts. She hates me buying anything for myself or me spending any time on my hobbies, videography and bodybuilding. She shames me whenever I do anything for myself. I'm confused and I feel that I'm not living up to her expectations, so I start trying harder to please her. That didn't help. The situation just got worse. I start dreading coming home to deal with her shit. I start going out on my own and drinking quite heavily on Saturday nights at an over 28s nightclub just to get away from her. It is there that I meet men between 20 and 25 years my elder, and they start talking to me about their experiences going through a divorce. I start telling them about my relationship difficulties, and we start sharing information amongst ourselves, meeting outside the nightclub for dinners. They could see that I was on a path that was going to lead me into the exact same situation as they were in, divorced and paying child support and never seeing their kids. They offer me a lifeline in the form of mentoring and sage advice. As I listen up and take note of them and their experiences, I start seeing myself when looking at them and thinking, this is me in 25 years' time or sooner if I stay in the relationship with my fiancée. I then get online and I start looking for forums which divorced men post in. I'm awakened. I put my male ego aside that I'm any different from these men, and I realise that I need to dump my fiancée and take up a fully independent lifestyle of my own, where I live alone, do my own thing, and steer clear of long-term committed relationships. I do a lot of independent research, and this is when I first start taking the red pill. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together. I keep putting up with my fiance's shit for another 3 years, however, before she has an oops pregnancy. We discuss the situation, and as she is a strong, independent woman with a career and doesn't want a child at this stage of her life, we decide that the best thing to do is for her to have an abortion. She does this, and I paid for it. The relationship with her is getting harder and harder for me to deal with. Her constant bitching and complaining is getting me so irritated and depressed, all I can think of is getting away from her, living alone and having my freedom back. Older friends of mine become sex tourists for the first time, and I start thinking that maybe, just maybe, I should follow them to Thailand and see if I too enjoy it as much as they said they did. I decide to do a solo Thailand trip, and I book my flights and accommodation for 6 months ahead of time for Pattaya, Thailand. And I told my fiancée that I did so merely because I needed a holiday away from it all. I don't think she bought that, but regardless, the trip was now booked and paid for. Our relationship rules for money were always my money, her money, and couple money. Obviously, I bought it out of my money, as we never had any accumulated couple money. One day I get home and she started with her shit again. I got very emotional inside. It was like the last part of our relationship died and that my love for her was completely and utterly depleted. I sat her down, looked her in the eyes and said, I am leaving you. I no longer love you and I am ending our relationship. I will not be marrying you as I cannot stand being around you with your constant complaining and bitchiness. She is devastated and starts crying. I start organising remove lists to get my stuff out of the house. Before we entered our relationship, we wrote down an agreement that we both signed that basically stated what is hers, what's mine is mine. And I took this agreement out. I wrote this agreement as I was entering into the relationship having saved over $100,000 by age 26. And I knew from my past relationship with Miss Feminist that the odds were high that the relationship could end in breakup. She brought nothing but debt to the table in the form of student loans. We still agree on our written agreement we made in the beginning of our relationship. However, she was desperate for more funds, so I gave her some money to rent herself an apartment, pay first month's bond and some other expenses, as well as helped her pay the rent on our old place for a month after I had moved out. I didn't have to do this, but I felt that I should, given I was lucky she wasn't talking lawyers. I built about $250,000 in net assets while she was still struggling to pay off her student loans. I knew that I would have lost a lot if lawyers got involved, so I took the gamble of offering her a small amount of money and leaving. I'm now 33 years old at this point in time, and I'd been with her for 7 years. From my research, I knew that her sexual market value was well below mine at this point, and that a switch had occurred midway in our relationship as we both turned 30. We're the same age, having been born approximately 1 month apart. I could feel from my interactions with women at the over 28s that the demand for me was higher than in the past when I was younger, and I knew that my sexual market value was increasing. I looked around and saw that the women at the over 28s were getting really desperate. They were getting older, and time was ticking for them to find and snare a man. They had to act quickly, as they were losing their looks and fertility at a rapid pace. Meanwhile, I was getting richer and in even better shape. I'd started a business on the side, and it was going really well. My power, authority, and influence were growing, and I was becoming a highly effective leader. I move out on my own, and I start living for the first time in my life, alone. I absolutely love my independence and autonomy and freedom to come and go as I please, and I realized that I was suffering from post-relationship stress syndrome, as I could still hear her nagging, bitching and complaining in my head despite her being away from me. This continues to this day, and it's been almost a year now without her. The silence and peace of mind that I now have without her is amazing. This is the best feeling in the world. So liberating. Everything looks better. Things taste better. I start noticing things that I ignored before, like watching the sunrise, or the way the lights at night reflected on the water next to the river where I live, or the feeling of rain falling on me as I was out running. Colours look better. Things smell better. I start really enjoying life for the first time in years and feel that a great weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Then I travel to Thailand and I stay in Pattaya for 2 weeks. I experience life in a non-feminist culture and I love it. It feels like I've come home, and for the first time in my life I feel a sense of peacefulness as I go out and have sex with stunning Thai women who treat me like a man. They are submissive, slim and feminine, and everything women back home were not. It's a beautiful feeling which I've never experienced before, being with a woman who doesn't have a mistrust or hatred towards me as a man. I become very angry at society back in the West as I realise at that point that I'm living outside the feminist matrix and I'm essentially unplugged for the first time in my life. I realised that I've been programmed from birth to be a slave and that everyone around me was lying to me, including my own parents. I couldn't even trust my own mother, for fuck's sake. I dread coming back to Australia and putting up with the politically correct bullshit in the workplace and having to deal with feminists and their ilk day after tiresome day. Whilst in Thailand, I had my first bisexual experience with a ladyboy. I very much enjoyed it. I have a number of promiscuous sexual encounters with Thai ladyboys, and the sex is much more intense than anything I've ever experienced with a woman. The male stare and desire in a beautiful female's body. I was hooked. In Thailand, I was getting the eye everywhere I went from women, ladyboys and gay men, both the paid and non-paid variety. I'm 33 years old, 6'2", well-dressed, good-looking, fit and muscular. I'm a white farang, and I represented a great economic opportunity, potential for fatherhood, or just a good fuck opportunity for the gays and ladyboys. I'm seen as alpha wherever I go. Women in restaurants, non-prostitutes, hand me their phone numbers. Women flirt with me like crazy, and I realise that back in Australia I'm seen as a beta everywhere I go. The alphas back in Australia must feel what I'm feeling in Thailand. I get back from Pattaya and I start reflecting on my experiences. I listen to all the Stardust's and Barbarossa's work on YouTube, and I start emailing Stardust about my experiences being treated like a celebrity in Thailand, and this prompts him to make a video titled Hypothesis Can Be Tested. I swallow the red pill. I shut down all dating in Australia, all short-term and long-term relationships, and I become a MGTOW. I become voluntarily celibate for one reason: power. I don't want women in the Australian feminist culture to hold any power over me, and the only thing that they ever had that this power over me was their pussy. This now meant much less to me given my bisexual experiences in Pattaya. Now I know I can go both ways, and I actually preferred sex with stunning ladyboys over normal women. I was liberated, but frustrated at the same time. Very few ladyboys in Australia. The ladyboys I'd encountered and had encounters with were on a scale of beauty and attractiveness so far above that of any of the genetic Western women I had ever been with in my life. How was this possible? It is what it is. I completely understand just how strong the male urge is towards female beauty. Once you've had a partner who is stunningly beautiful, it's like a hypnotic drug that you just can't get enough of, even if that partner was born male. Anyway, now that I'm living alone and avoiding all relationships, I have enormous amounts of free time, which I've devoted to learning the Thai language. I've logged almost 500 hours worth of study. I can understand the language and I have a vocabulary of over 2,000 words. I can read and write Thai. I've become obsessed with Thailand and I've booked and paid for my next trip 1 year in advance. I've made the decision at age 34 to become an expat and live 11 months out of the year in the West, work hard, earn, save and invest as much money as possible, and then live 1 month out of the year in Thailand. I also made a life decision to stay living alone, concentrate 100% on my work, my business, my hobbies, bodybuilding and fitness. I internalized the red pill, and I now refuse to commit to anyone ever again except myself. I refuse to ever get married. I refuse to ever cohabit again. I'll never put myself in a situation where I could wake up one day and think, who the hell is this person I'm living with? Could you imagine the situation if I ever chose a ladyboy to live with? One day I could wake up a few years into the relationship, look at her and she looks like a man. Looks fade. Imagine that situation. Never really been attracted to, nor have I ever had sex with a man. I realised that becoming single was the best decision I ever made. I now have vast amounts of free time for hobbies and to study and work as hard as I want. I no longer have any stress in my life and I have great peace of mind. No woman is in my ear bitching anymore. I no longer dread coming home, and you know what? It feels fucking great. I now see women for who and what they are, driven by hypergamy and the need for home, security, family, resources, male status, etc. Being voluntarily celibate has given me enormous power. They cannot control me with their sex. Being an average man in Australia, by the very definition of women following their hypergamous instincts and marrying up, I can clearly see now that the only women I've ever had access to have been women who are below average. I mean, think about it. A man walks into a nightclub and thinks, wow, look at all these opportunities. But hang on a minute. The very fact that these women are in the nightclub suggests the very fact that they are present must mean that they've been passed over by richer, taller, more successful, more socially dominant men than myself. How do you like that, Mr. Player? The bottom line is that feminism and female entitlement have created an entire generation of men in Western society who are just like me. Average to above average earners who are overlooked by both average and above average earning women who are constantly looking upwards for higher status men. I realise this truth fully now after my Thailand experiences, and it has made me very angry. It should make all men like me angry, as this is not something we chose to have happen to us. Feminists and their male enablers allowed this to occur in the West, and men like me are doing the best we can given the shitty options we have. Some will decide to become MGTOW and expat to places like Thailand. I dread to think of the miserable situations others like me are in with the women they have. Since I've gotten back from Thailand and the women at work have started hating me as they can see who and what I've become. I see through all their bullshit and I've become a very dangerous threat because I now have a much deeper understanding of gender, both on an intellectual level and on an emotional level, given my Thai bisexual experiences. I'm 34 years old. I'm fit, healthy, good-looking, strong career and business prospects. My sexual market value is high and has not yet peaked. I'm in a very powerful position to live a fantastic life. I'm extremely lucky and fortunate, however. Without the internet, without forums, YouTube, and the men who have so willingly sacrificed their time and effort to bring them to the world, without older male friends I've met along the way, and without the soul-crushing experiences of men who have been through the divorce ringer, I would be in a very different situation today. I dodged a major bullet with my fiancée. I'd be a father today if she had made a different life decision, and this would have been a disaster for the child, given the way my fiancée was. I never want to be in that situation ever again. There are times I look in the mirror and smile with relief, as I truly understand just how lucky I am. Esteemed viewers, I've been very honest with you today about my life experience, and I hope that you will welcome me to YouTube. I hope that my bisexual experiences do not in any way alienate me from you. I'm a man going his own way, a MGTOW, perhaps the most dangerous type of MGTOW, as well because I understand gender on an emotional level that I never did before, and this has given me a deeper level of insight than I'd ever imagined I would have. I know it is dangerous insight, as many of the women at work have turned against me despite me not telling them anything about my experiences. They've picked up on my emotions, and they know through my actions that I can no longer be manipulated or controlled by their shaming tactics. Remember, esteemed viewers, the words of Robert Briffault: the female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place. This is my story. I hope you found it illuminating.